Welcome back to the Move with Purpose podcast, and today I'm joined by the fabulous Darren Richards, strategic leader, fundraiser, volunteer campaign advisor, author, an all-round incredible great guy. And my friends, I'm so pleased to have you on. Darren, welcome.
I'm going to take you everywhere I go. You can go in the room first, you can do all that stuff.
I'm doing your
and
intro
then I'll come
now.
after, yeah?
Thank you for joining me on the podcast today. I'm so
Pleasure.
excited to have you. We're going to be digging deep into this topic of leap and looking at all the times in your life when you've had to make a leap and how that's impacted you and shaped the character you are today. But I wanted to start by asking, what is it I need to know about your childhood to help me understand the man you are
You're
today?
diving right in there.
Yeah, let's
You're
go.
diving right in there. My childhood. Well, I come from a broken home, which is not fun. Moved around a little bit, started off in London and then in Hertfordshire and then in Essex. So in terms of kind of stability, that probably wasn't the greatest thing. I was bullied at school. Not the greatest thing again, and that affects relationships, how you relate to people, how you view other people. And I wasn't particularly smart at school, really. I was in, like, they call it special needs, or like a special set for maths, where you need extra help and stuff, probably a little bit because I'd had this bumpy road. So academically, I think I was probably a little bit behind. And it wasn't until probably secondary school that I leveled out a little bit and started working my way up, mostly because of, everything comes around, doesn't it? Good leaders, good teachers, people believing in you and saying, no, come on, you're smarter than that. Oh, come on, I believe in you, that sort of thing.
When was church introduced to your life?
Church, so both my grandparents prayed for me and would buy me books, and I'd use them to like prop things up. I wasn't really that interested in that stuff. But yeah, I think it's around about kind of end of secondary school, and there was a Christian organisation called Vis-a-Vis. I don't think they exist anymore, connected to the Elim movement. And they came in and they had non-alcoholic cocktails and music videos. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. And I went to the front, and they gave me a little kind of Everyday with Jesus thing, which is a little book, basically everyday little devotional. And I ran out of that, and I was like, I don't know how to be a Christian anymore because my little books ran out, and I don't know where to get another new little book. So that was my first instruction. And then after that, I met a guy at sixth form college. I actually dropped out of my A-levels, but I started A-levels, and I met a guy, and he was a church-going Christian, and we were away on this residential. And it was the Coolio song. You know the Coolio song, that had to walk through the valley of the shadow of death? Yeah. Man, that dates me, doesn't it? That dates
Very
me.
much so.
Old guy. Anyway, it'll be like covered again soon, and people think it's cool. So that came on, and I was like, oh, it's a psalm. And he's like, yeah, I know it's a psalm. Idiot. And then we got chatting, and it seemed real to him. And he's like, I'll take you on a tour of the churches around Chelmsford. And I was like, cool. And we went to the first one. I'm like, this is great.
Yeah, loved it.
He's like, well, this is just the first one. I'll stay here. Okay. So I settled at the first church, which happened to be a Baptist church, now called Central Church, in Chelmsford. And again, mentors, role models in my lives at that point. And that's when I first heard about this continent called Africa, which is a crazy thing. But up to then, it was just, so that's when a youth leader kind of took me in his wing, a guy called Barry. And it opened my eyes, I guess, to different types of leadership, different types of community, and certainly this thing called Africa. And they went to Malawi, and there's stories about Malawi, and I was a bit like, this is like a whole other planet. This is so different to my world. And I didn't go on that trip, but it planted a seed that meant that later I then, instead of paying back my student loan every summer at uni, I would go to Kenya or Malawi or something and get in the way.
Cool. Interested, because I remember growing up in church. My grandma kind of took me to church, Sunday school, and I didn't really, you go in, but you don't really know why you're going. It's just routine for me at this point. And it was only until I was 17, I went to a church conference called Midnight Oil. You're probably familiar with it. I know,
Mr. Seth Pinnock.
Seth Pinnock, I went to this conference, and I danced all my life, but Midnight Oil was the first time I had the opportunity to dance for God. So I was like, okay, let's just do it. My mom kind of signed me up and was like, you're going to this thing. So I went to this conference and loved every moment of it. Fell in love with Jesus. I mean, instantly. I can't really describe how that conference shaped my life. But I remember coming home that night and saying I need to get baptized, and I've got 7 days to do it.
Wow.
God clearly
You're
spoke
pretty intense
to me.
about things, aren't you?
Really intense. So within those 7 days, gave my life to God. I remember being 17 and we just knew this was the time to really take what was mine, if that made sense.
That's great.
When did you give your life to God?
Oh, I think I will probably sort of at that first little non-alcoholic cocktails, and I won't tell you the music videos that date me again. But I think it was probably with Simon, talking to Simon, the guy at college. So a bit later on, sixth form college sort of age. As I say, I ended up dropping out of my A-levels. But yeah, I would hang out with him and go to his house, and he would just like talk to me. It wasn't even like Bible study. He would just talk to me about what his faith meant to him. And he spoke about Christ in a way that it was a mate. It was a friend. It was someone he had a relationship with, which was completely alien to me. It made more sense than my elderly grandparents, because when you're young, your grandparents feel like they're ancient, right? For sure. Now it's like, yeah, it's not the same. But at the time I was like, you're talking about joy bubbling up within you, and this is weird.
Couldn't relate.
Just the phrases and the kind of terminology they're using, I couldn't relate to. But with Simon, he was like, he was talking about obviously when he was stressed or when he needed help or guidance. And I was thinking, gosh, that's, and so, but it wasn't like an overnight thing at all. And no one in my kind of close family was that was that kind of a Christian, I suppose.
Okay.
So I had to figure it out, and it was mainly being around, as I say, youth leaders and friends at church and stuff, and seeing how different people live their lives, really. And actually, I think one of the good things about church, which is separate from the worshipping Jesus bit, is that it is a sense of community where it cuts across ages, it cuts across ethnicity, it cuts across the class system, I suppose, if you want to use that term, and you start to see how different people view life, how different people do parenting or do whatever it is. And so that, again, I think that's a huge benefit to grow up.
Talk to me about Bible college. What led you there?
I wanted to get away, wanting to find out about, I wanted to be a bit of a sponge, really. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't, as I say, my Everyday with Jesus ran out when I was younger. I didn't know what it meant to be a Christian, because I hadn't seen it modeled necessarily in my direct kind of orbit. So I felt like, do you know what? If I go away, it'll be like heaven. I'm going to go to heaven. I'm going to go and be around Christians all the time, and I'm going to learn about my faith. And as it was, I was learning guitar at the time. I wasn't musical before that particularly. And the first night I got there, it did feel a bit like that. We walked up, I went to Cliff College, which is in Derbyshire, beautiful part of Derbyshire. And we went out for a walk in the evening. We were just going to go for a drink locally. And it was all misty, and I was with all these kind of smiling people. And I was like, this is amazing. And then within a few months, I was like, get me out of here. Really? Only because it just felt, you could literally eat and sleep and like study all in the same building. You didn't have to go outside, and I didn't have a car. So it felt, so no, amazing place. And I really loved being there. But again, I thought I was going to learn about being a Christian in an institution. Right. And it was great. And I needed that. And I needed that to be absorbed for a while. But it wasn't until I got to uni, which was like the next year, that I started to learn what it meant to be a Christian, when there are things around you that want to pull you in different directions, or when people are challenging you going, I don't think that's true, or how could you believe that? And you're like, oh, okay. So that's where you learn to be a Christian, is in the world, I suppose. It's in real life. It's not necessarily in a kind of monastic bubble. And people were saying to me at the time, but again, when you're a teenager, you know best. And I was like,
what did you study at uni?
So I did biblical studies. I did philosophy and biblical studies, and excuse me. And again, huge challenge, like a secular department. And I would literally spend all day with them ripping the Bible apart and be going, oh, I'm not so sure about this faith thing anymore. And I thought, oh, okay. And I almost had to learn to read the Bible again after Bible college, after university. Okay. Because I'd learned to deconstruct everything I was reading, rather than just saying, God, what are you saying to me today? God, what's the wisdom? What's the word? What's the manna today? The good thing about the Bible is you don't have to have a degree to understand it. It pretty much says what it says.
Do you regret going
to uni?
Yeah.
No, I loved uni, because I was saying to you before I went, like, I thought I was going to have this big hedonistic kind of get out of Bible college and almost as soon as I got there, they put me in charge of the CU, the Christian Union for the Big Hall of Residence. And again, I just found a really amazing group of people there.
So when we talk about taking a leap, uni was a massive leap for you because you've come from a family that nobody had been to uni before.
Yeah.
How did that feel, like emotionally, mentally?
Yeah, it's really jarring, really disorientating. It's if other people in your family have done it, if your friends have done it, if it's just something that was assumed of you, then obviously you're going to be fine. Of course I'm going to be fine. If no one's ever done it before, you're a bit like, there's a question mark here.
Yeah.
Am I going to fall on my face? Is this where I get found out type thing? And that imposter syndrome, which again is overused, but that does kind of follow you through. If you're trying to leap and do new things, that follows you through.
So you almost become a trailblazer, don't you? In the midst of starting this journey at university, you're trailblazing this new path. That leadership journey had already begun and you probably didn't even realise it, which is really cool.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, I didn't feel like at the time. I felt like I was just fumbling through, trying to work out what to do next. It's only really in the last couple of years that I've started to feel comfortable in what I'm called to and what I'm good at and the things I'm not good at and the things I want to spend my life doing. But again, it's about being absorbed in a community. Yeah. I suppose that's the same as Bible college, really. Putting yourself in a different environment with different people and different influences and different expectations of themselves and different values and principles to that which you've grown up with. You shouldn't underestimate the power of that.
I'm inspired by your career journey because you just seem like you've had a promotion every 2 years, maybe?
Last 5 years I have, yeah. But I told you, we were making coffee beforehand. I only got sacked before that.
Talk to me a little bit about that, because we don't see that on LinkedIn.
Yes, this is the jump. So uni, I went to Youth for Christ after uni, and did some other stuff with young offenders. But then eventually, I sort of remembered this call, this passion for African nations, right? So at university, every summer, I'd go away with like Tier Fund or a church project or something, and I'd go to a slum or something like that in Africa, in African nation, I should say, sorry, and felt completely useless and was like, I'm literally getting in the way. Why on earth is this white guy from England here? I need to learn to do something useful if I really want to help these people in poverty. So I was with Youth for Christ for 14 years and I was like, okay, I'm stuck now because I've changed roles lots of times, but I don't know, again, big question mark. Is this where I fall on my face? Yeah. Can I leave this organization that I've become so familiar with and that know me? So I pushed a few doors, got a few interviews at some, like you'd recognize the names of these charities and failed 2 or 3. One of them I didn't go to because I didn't feel it was right, but I got an interview, I didn't go. The other 2 went for interviews and just didn't work out. And then Mercy-ships at the time, there's a guy there who I'd been at Youth for Christ with. Okay. And he was the CEO. And I only sent him my CV just to say, could you look over this? Could you check I've done it right? And he was like, oh, look, do you know what? There's a role that I actually think is a really good fit for you. I will sort of come out of the process a bit, but you need to apply. And so I applied for that and got that. And again, I was like, it was one of those moments where in your life, you're like, oh, I've arrived now. I've done it. I've reached the goal I set for myself. And I was like, oh, I'm finally working for an incredible Christian healthcare global charity. Yeah. That's predominantly working or only now working in the African coast, African nations. Amazing. And then like 2 or 3 months in, I was there with my friend in tears going, I've screwed it up. Really? I've messed this up. And it was all about
enjoying it or?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. And I'd done some good stuff and I'd come up with a good vision and did a big scoping report and I thought it looked good and everyone was impressed and stuff. But then it was my team. I didn't bring my team with me. Right. And I went in there and for lots of different complex reasons, didn't fit with my team. Interestingly now, they're people I really get on well with. But at the time, they were a bit like, who is this guy? And he's not even served on the ship, which is a big deal in Mercy-ships, like whether you've had experienced the ship and stuff. Yeah. And anyway, so I got called into a meeting that I thought was a kind of a chat, and they were like, so we're going to extend your probation. We're going to, which basically means we're going to think about sacking you. That's kind of corporate speak for we're not sure you're a fit. Yeah. And we need to get rid of you without you. Like,
what's running through your mind at that point?
So yeah, what's going through my mind is, oh my goodness, how am I going to pay my mortgage? And is this going to work? And but those moments where you just, for me, I just run back to God and just go, what the heck's happening here? Yeah. I've got a family to provide for. This was meant to be my dream job. I thought it was going well and I've messed it up. And and you it's your failures that you learn from. You don't. I wrote about this in the book, but it's genuinely true. I know it's a bit of a trope, a bit cliched, but it's only when you fail that you learn. There's no other way than other than making mistakes, and that's the only way you can learn. You can learn from other people's mistakes if you're smart.
Yeah,
do that. Definitely do that. It's less painful, but you still have to learn from your own mistakes. And for me, the mistake was I still hadn't learned to lead a team. I'd made mistakes in Youth for Christ in the way I was leading my team, and lost the trust of my team there, simply through not listening and not empowering them, being too much of a boss rather than a leader. And I was doing the same thing again. And that's where I was like, I need to learn to be a team leader really quick. And a lot of the stuff that I write in the heart of the book about learning to basically, a team need to trust you. They need to feel a sense of hope. They need to feel heard, listened, and they need to feel held. They need to feel like you've got this. And those 4 needs, I definitely learned in mentorships in my first couple of years. And after that, I found my, momentum, and then that was good after that.
You said you was moving like a boss and not a leader.
Yeah. What's
the big difference between a boss and a leader?
A boss tells you what to do, and a leader asks you, how do you think we should do this? Basically, so a good leader is a listener. So I talk about these 3 things. So when I'm approaching a difficult conversation, I assume the best, I aim to hear the struggles, and then I ask what I call questions, not questions, questions. Right? So assume the best. If someone is peeing you off and you've got a personality or a conflict, professional conflict, the natural thing, the instinctive human thing to do is assume they're in the wrong and you need to persuade them, right? So you start off by thinking they're probably a reasonable, intelligent, decent person. I've probably misunderstood this. You expect the best of them. That's the trust in kicking in, right?
Okay.
Then you hear the struggles. You don't start by going, right, I've got my list, go. 2 ears, 1 mouth. You're there to listen first and foremost, and you listen by repeating back, active listening. Wish they taught that in school. Active listening. Active listening is just taking what they're saying and repeating it back, making sure you've understood it. So what I hear you saying is that when I did that, it made you feel like I didn't value your contributions to the project. Is that right?
Right.
Yeah, that's right. But also this. And basically you let them keep saying also this until you've absolutely understood. Okay. And by that time, they've pretty much given you the solution because you've seen the best of them. So they're already not on a defensive front. You've heard the struggles, so they feel cared for. People need to know you care before, before they care what you know, as well. Can't remember the exact phrase. And then the last one is the questions. And if you need to lead them somewhere, people are rebellious and they don't like being told what to do. And a boss says, do this in this way by this date, or this will happen to you, right? A leader says, hey, we've got to get this done, right? It's exciting. I was wondering if we could figure out together how we might do that and how you think you're going to do this. So here's the target. We have got to raise £10,000. We're going to probably do that like this in the community. I'd love to know ideas about how we could do that and how you're going to approach that. And the same goes with if it's a conflict. So questions is a question that helps someone else discover their own solution. Okay, because people don't learn anything if you prescribe a solution. So if you act like a doctor and say, here's your prescription. Yeah. Okay, you've got problem A. Here's a prescription for problem A. They'll be like, oh, thanks very much. And they'll come back and go, sorry, it didn't work. Right? But if you act more like a coach, okay, so we've got this problem like at the side of a field, like a football field. Okay, great. So it looks like he keeps taking you out on the wing there. What do you want to do? I could try that. That sounds good. Also, you might want to just, great, off you go, back out again. And they'll come to you when they need answers. Right. That's a much better way of leading. You don't get in someone's face. They will come to you when they need help. And then, again, they're not looking for a solution. They're looking for you to help them find their own solution, to discover their own solution. Blaise Pascal said, people are most persuaded by that which has occurred to their own minds rather than that which you've dictated to them. So the human condition is one where we don't want people to give us answers. And as a leader, you're put in a formal position where you go, oh, thank goodness, I've got a title now. I'm now the director of so-and-so and so-and-so. Everyone's going to do as they say. No, they're not. No. And then like 6 months in, you realize that your team's falling apart. So yeah, you're much better off making sure people no, it's not, it's got to be genuine. Making sure the people in your team know that you care about them, that you've got their back, that you trust them, and making sure that they're coming up with solutions to their problems.
when I look at LinkedIn and I research your career, you're like, wow, all of these different promotions. But the main leap for you was really learning how to be a leader.
Oh yeah. It wasn't about the title. The title will come, right? If you're of value in the workplace, in the marketplace, if you've got something of value, hopefully I have some things that are valuable now, right? And so long as I can charge a salary. People don't think about it like this. They think, I want a job.
Right.
I'm going to find out what someone else needs done, and maybe they'll pay me to do it.
Okay.
Whereas if you have more entrepreneurial or kind of intrapreneurial mindset, you're thinking, no, I'm selling my time, I'm selling my value, I'm selling my skills.
Yeah.
And I will get paid in relation to the value and the problem I'm solving. It's always about a problem.
Wow.
You know, Elon Musk says you get paid in relation to the problem, the size and scope of the problem you solve. So even poverty is a multi-billion-pound problem. It's not one that I want to kind of get rich off of, but it is one that philanthropists and others will invest in to see solved. And so once you change your mindset, you have to have a mindset of what's the problem that I'm solving? What skills can I bring to bear in that problem? And who are the people around me? So the three things that I say to people, rather than thinking about, you see on Instagram, don't you? You know, just find something you love, find something you do that you're good at, and find something you get paid for.
Yeah.
And you're like, that doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. I did that. I tried to do that at one point. And I was like, this doesn't work. Well, I like playing guitar. I can get paid for writing appeal letters, and it doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
But what you need to do is you say, well, what's breaking my heart? I bet your heart breaks every time you see a 12-year-old girl in a broken background, in a crappy home situation, who is hugely talented and failing at school, and you go, oh, every single time, get along to my class, and I'm going to fill you with self-esteem. I'm going to train you to dance and forget all the dance. It's not about that anyway. I'm going to tell you that you are someone, and you are someone in Christ, right?
Yeah.
Every time you see that, your heart breaks. That's the problem. That's the pain that makes you go, oh, that's what gets you up in the morning for whatever it is, 30, 40 years, 50 years of your career. You need to be good at something. So you need to develop some skills. You don't have to have the skills to begin with. Every time I've made a leap, I haven't had the skills. Right. At uni, I didn't have the skills. I had to learn how to do uni, which is at Youth for Christ, I didn't know how to be a fundraiser. I had to learn every single bit of being a fundraiser one by one. At Reflex, I didn't know how to run projects in young offenders in prisons. I'd never been to prison or in a prison. And at Mercerships, I hadn't worked in a global NGO before. At every stage, you're learning new skills. Skills can always be learned.
Yeah.
It's the passion that will drive you, and the calling which comes from outside of yourself. And then you need the people, you need the partners. And you, as I say, you put yourself in an environment, in a community where people are like-minded, where they have different and complementary gifts. And where I am now at Mercerships, and in the latter part of my career, I know that the people around me are much smarter than me and much better at what they do, right?
Yeah, and you're comfortable in that,
and I'm
right?
absolutely fine with that. In fact, I prefer it that way. Like Steve Jobs says, you hire smart people and let them tell you what to do. Right. That's not directly true, because they want to be led, but I know what he's getting at. Like you find, the more I move up, wherever it is, the career chain or whatever ladder, you find the people around you are way better than you at what they do, and that's okay. You shouldn't be threatened by that. You should say, okay, look, again, I'll tell you the what, and you tell me the how. Or, and the leader carries the why, the pain, the passion, the pain and the problem and the need, and has a vision for a solution. But the people around you can carry the how. Like, okay, we need to raise, I don't know, whatever it is. For Mercerships, you're talking about millions of dollars, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to know how to do that on my own, but you guys do. So let's figure it out.
And for our listeners, those that don't know what Mercerships is, and your current title, because you started as, was it the leader of
Church Partnership Manager? Church
Partnership Manager. Now you are.
That's the one I nearly got sacked from.
The Global Fundraising and Marketing Director of Mercerships.
Yeah.
What is Mercerships?
Mercerships is a global Christian set of charities, but a global Christian charitable organization that exists to bring hope and healing to those in poverty. And we do that by providing free surgery and advanced medical training. So we have currently 2 ships, the Global Mercy and the Africa Mercy, and they are a village and a hospital and a ship all rolled into one. They're not boats, they're ships, they're massive. When you're on it, you forget you're on a ship, because they're so huge and they don't really move. They stay in one place like a year at a time, 10 months at a time. And everyone on that ship, everyone you meet is a volunteer. More or less everyone. There'll be a couple of people who paid, but usually everyone you meet is volunteer. Now, some of them are doing it for a week or a month. Most of them are doing it for years or 12 months at a time. Some of them, it's their life. The surgeon, Dr. Gary Parker, who is probably one of the closest people to Jesus I could ever imagine, genuinely. I don't say that lightly at all. Originally he was going to volunteer for 3 months, and he's been there for 35 years now on the ship. And he could be, he could be in America earning big bucks. I mean, he could be doing...
And he's a volunteer.
He's a volunteer. He's probably one of the most skilled surgeons in the world, and he does it for free. In fact, he pays fees like anybody. So he has people in his church and stuff who pay for him to be there. Incredible man. And he's just so humble and just ekes wisdom. And do you know what? Being beyond his incredible surgical skills, and he's a magician. He can take these huge tumors, and people can have these beautiful, and they can be returned to their community.
Yeah.
Even beyond his skill as a surgeon, it's his heart. Like, you see him go around. Like, 35 years. After a while, I'll be like,
I'm done
patients. But he's not like that. He will take time over every patient, over every bed. He'll hold their hand. He'll look them in the eye. He'll go, "How you doing? You okay? You're doing ever so well. You're doing brilliantly. And we're just going to do one more little surgery, and you're going to be done, and you're going to feel so much better." And you got to remember, in some of these cultures, these big tumors or the burns or that the children have and stuff, or the bowed legs, yes, they're cosmetic. Of course, but they're also debilitating. They're life affecting. There's a certain type of cataracts which is more associated with poverty, with children. I'm not talking about old people, little children. Little boy called Tresor that I saw, who's blind in both eyes because of poverty-induced cataracts. Again, a short operation, and he can see again. Like the blind, literally the blind see, the lame walk, and outcasts return home. So to be part of that kind of an organisation, there isn't a day that I wake up and I don't think that is a huge privilege to be able to do that.
So I want to get into the book next.
Okay.
The Plain Parable. Yeah. How to lift off, lead, and
succeed.
Succeed, succeed.
Mate, you don't know how many people emailed me and texted me, even teachers going, "I'm so sorry, you got a spelling mistake.
And you're
that
like,
should be
no.
succeed." I'm like, "No, it's meant to be succeed." And they're like, "Oh, no, okay, yeah, no, sure, that's definitely a word. Obviously, I knew that was a word." And I'm like, yeah, it's succeed. It means to give over, like succession.
I want to say my key takeaway was, how quickly am I working myself out of what I've built? That sounds really crazy, but that's exactly right. That's the succeed part, isn't it?
Yeah, succession. There's no success without succession. Yeah.
If you strangle the thing you've built, how do you move on?
Yeah, and it will outgrow you. It should outgrow you. It should get to the point where you need a Tim Cook, not a Steve Jobs, right? You need someone who's a different kind of leader, different kind of manager. A founder is a very rare and beautiful thing, right? It's someone who's got the guts and the skills and takes the risks and probably had a bit of mess in their story that allowed them to overcome and build resilience. Like a founder there aren't a huge number of founders out there, but it's more where you have the types of skills where you're being prompted, God's giving you a little nudge for the next thing, the next vision. Everything rises and falls when it comes to leadership on trust. How much can you trust others? How much can you trust yourself? How much can you trust God? Trust is absolutely huge. Without trust, you can't achieve anything, do anything, go anywhere, be anyone. Trust.
Trust was a big thing for me. Particularly when I was reading the book, I kind of had this self-reflective moment that I don't trust my team enough. At Eloquent, we raise leaders really well. So people that come with us to dance, then become dance teachers, lead their own classes and eventually take their own groups, etc. It was this 360 moment for me that I'm not trusting them as much as I could be. I
wonder if sometimes you see them and you still see that little girl or little boy coming through the door.
Potentially, yeah.
And you're like, but and you remember. It's one of those things, like a prophet's not accepting their own town, isn't it? It's that thing where you're like, you've seen all my best moments and worst moments.
So my biggest takeaway from the book was where you share, I believe it's in the final chapter, there are 4 stages for raising up leaders you can hand over to. Number 1 is tell.
I'm glad you're telling me, by the way, because I won't remember. Because my memory's terrible.
Number 2 is sell.
Yeah.
Number 3 is empower.
Yes.
And then number 4, most importantly, is delegate and celebrate.
Yeah.
What do you want people to walk away from this book as their biggest takeaway?
So I think it's that chapter. It all builds towards, that's why it's succeed. And I took the hit on people thinking I can't spell.
Yeah.
So the whole book is based on this story of a plane an allegory of a plane taking off, learning to cruise, kind of getting comfortable, and then realizing they have to land, basically. And I think that you've gone through all this hard stuff to get where you are, and you can rightfully say, "Hey, I've done all right here. I've done all this, right?" And then you start to get good at what you're doing. You start thinking, I've made it now. I know what I'm doing. I've done this before. I've come across that problem before. I've solved this before. But it's the thing about the coming down the other side again and going, oh, all right, okay. How do I hand over? How do I move on to the next thing? How do I start something again? I don't want to start something again.
Yeah.
That was hard. I could fail because once we've worked really hard and we've gone through those sacrifices and we've had the sleepless nights and we've learned all the habits and showed the grit that it takes to get there, and then we finally built a team and oh my goodness, it's actually functioning. And I woke up today and there wasn't a crisis to solve, right? Then to think I might have to give all this up and start again. It's hard to change that hat, to put on some new clothing, to do something new. But again, it's so freeing, isn't it? When I've done something, at every point in my life, when I've tried on a new role, there's a moment where it feels weird, and you're like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this, and I'm going to get found out. And just on the drive here, I was just thinking of a phrase like, it's not fake it until you make it. It's trust until you adjust, right?
Right.
So, and I genuinely believe that. I think you need to trust yourself, trust the people around you, trust the people who put you in that position, who have obviously decided you're the person. Trust God. And the harder the stuff gets, the more you have to go to God every day or multiple times a day. And then eventually you will adjust. And one day you'll wake up and go, oh, I'm doing this now. I guess this is something I can do. But going back through that process of adjustment is painful every time, isn't it?
In the midst of writing the book, you had another difficult leap in the loss of your dad.
I did.
Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I want to honour my dad here, but we weren't like hugely close. I think that wasn't a secret. And but what I see in him are some of the things that I saw in him, are some of the things that I really admire and value. So the grit and determination, the importance of providing for your family, of working hard, loving provider, good dad, solid dad, but we just didn't see a lot of each other. And anyway, so I go to his funeral and I'm just like, my mouth, like my jaw was on the floor because the place was like standing room only. People are coming up to me saying, I wouldn't be an ambulance man if it wasn't for your dad. I wouldn't be a paramedic. I wouldn't be a nurse. I asked your dad to be my best man, to give me away at my wedding. And I was like, where do all these people come from? And genuinely, and that's again where the humility thing comes in. So he didn't necessarily come across as, but actually he certainly didn't brag about all these people who he was investing into their lives. And there were literally scores of people, maybe 200 people. And I lost count of the people who came up to me and said, wow, your dad really invested in me, and he didn't have to, and he wasn't getting paid. And I learned so much. Every day I used stuff that he taught. He was a medical trainer, and he was a medical expert, and he used to raise up people and train people. And that's where it really, really enforced, because I was sort of getting to that passage. It's not the Bible. I was getting to that chapter in the book at the time, and I was thinking, do you know what, that hammers it home that obviously he wasn't a perfect person, but he was a good dad, and he was someone who believed in giving of himself to raise others up. And I think he got a lot of satisfaction. And I think he felt a huge sense of achievement from looking around and seeing people in positions of being useful, usually in medical professions, and knowing he played a part in their journey. And that's a side of him that I didn't necessarily understand as much until after he died. He would say things like, one day you'll understand. And you're like, yeah, Dad, whatever. And then as the older you get and you go through stuff and things go wrong and you think, actually, you did all right, Dad. Like, you always looked after us, paid for me to have driving lessons. I remember once I told the story at his funeral, because I got up and gave the eulogy or whatever. And I remember once I was on a train, like just recently, I was on a train. And by this stage, by the way, he's in the late stages of liver cancer. He could barely leave the house. Wow. And I was on a train in London, and it was 2 a.m. or something. No, 12 or 1 a.m. And the train wasn't going anywhere. And he just messaged me and said, look, I'll come get you. And I'm like, Dad, you live in Ipswich and you're dying. And he's like, no, I'll come get you. It's fine. And it's like those moments where I feel really fortunate, because not everyone's got a dad who, full stop, and not everyone's got a dad who'd do that. So I feel like you have to judge people on what they've been through, and he's been through a lot in his life. And are they still getting up every day and trying? Are they still giving their best at whatever that could be for them? Yeah. And I believe that my dad was someone who did that.
That's really powerful for me. Particularly because I can relate in the fact that I don't have the best relationship with my dad, or didn't.
Okay.
We're actively working on it now. But one thing that I've had to really 360 review is what his upbringing was like, for one.
There you go.
And I've had to sit down and quiz him about that in therapy, just so that I can better understand the man he is today. And then also it's this letting go of the expectation I once had of him and just accepting what he's trying to do now. I think a lot of people miss that. Sometimes they hang on to, oh, you didn't do this and you didn't show up for that and you didn't do this, and they reel off a history of things their parents
again, isn't it?
missed.
You're going to compare them to the best parents you've seen in your social circle, basically, or on TV even. And people aren't. You can't do that to someone. You have to. You do have to. You know, you don't want to negate your own trauma or your own difficulties, but you also want to cut them some slack a little bit and think, do you know what, they were going to do some crap, and they were doing their best, and they could have given up, and they could have. So my dad, for example, his dad walked out, just left when he was I don't know, 10 years old, whatever. And my dad effectively became the breadwinner in the family, mum, 2 boys, and my dad, I think, decided, I'm never going to be that guy. I'm never going to be the guy who just sods off and leaves my kids to fend for themselves. And he never was. So although we weren't close, in that way, I never wanted for anything. In terms of I knew that he was there, he had my back, and he would always work hard and provide and stuff like that. So yeah, you got to look at what they did, not what they didn't do, I suppose. I think
that's hard, isn't it?
Yeah, my brother and I were talking about that the other day. Like, we can have all these lists of things that we wish he was more like, again, which is quite arrogant, I suppose. But actually, you got to look at what they did do and who they were and how they lived their life, and the fact, if someone keeps trying, you've got to respect the fact that even if someone keeps falling over, if they keep getting up and trying to do the right thing, then that's got to be enough, surely.
What has your dad taught you that empowers you to be a father for your boys? What is that one thing that you want to take into your parenting?
I think it's that sense of provision, isn't it? That I know it's a kind of an old-fashioned thing, but being a provider, like he'd always make sure that even if money was short, and he had some pretty difficult business times, like financially, he'd always make sure we had a roof over our head. He would. So my parents were split up, and we'd go on access visits or whatever it was. Yeah. And I know that the rest of the week, we wouldn't see him for 3 weeks sometimes. During that time, the cupboards would be bare. Yeah. And then when we're there, it's full of like cereal and food, and the fridge fills up, and then we deplete the food over a weekend, and then he'd live off nothing, scraps and stuff for the next. So I think that's the sort of thing where, you know, if you come to a house and there's a full fridge, and he's going without during the week, so you can have that. I think that's a nice picture of the kind of dad you want, isn't it?
Wow. What's next for Darren? What's the next leap for you?
I've tried not to. Every time I think I've got it figured out and I've got the career plan, then I God sort of gives me a bit of a slap and goes, come on, go over yourself. So, you know, the book was hard work. One of the hardest things I've ever done. Made myself get up early in the morning to do it around other stuff that's going on, work and stuff. And I was really proud to do it. And now I need to figure out, is it another book, or is it, you know, or do I turn it into a course? So I think I probably need to do the audiobook next, very practically, because I don't like reading, believe it or not. And reading's really important. You know, leaders are readers and all that. So I need to do the audiobook so that people can consume it. Okay. I'm really excited about my current role with Mercy Ships, really stretching me, challenging me. And once again, I feel like I've just left the runway. Wow. And I'm like, all right, that was a mistake. Move on. Keep pulling up. Keep throttling up. We'll get there. You know, building a new team and all the you know, all of that stuff, and how you do it and how you win people over and build trust and stuff. So I've restarted that journey again, I guess. I was with the UK charity for a while, and I was very fortunate. I ended up by the end, I was covering for the CEO. She went on holiday.
Wow.
And this is another lesson as well. Know who you are and who you're not. So I was like, right, here I go. I've made it again. I'm the CEO for a couple of weeks. Bring it on. And I was like, this is the worst job
Didn't
ever.
enjoy it? No.
Yeah, like all of the rubbish, anything that no one else can deal with ends up in your inbox. And it was a light week, by the way. My CEO reminded me that when she got back, it was a light week. If you're in the role long term, you've then got all of the legal responsibility as well. And you're looking after people, you're looking after their livelihoods. And as I say, if something goes wrong or there's some big media storm or whatever, it's on you. What are you going to do? Figure it out. And I don't know. So I think that kind of made me realize I don't want to be a CEO. I actually don't want to be a Romanah. I don't necessarily want to run my own project. And
you don't want to run your own business.
That's okay. Yeah. That's okay. I don't think that I'm called to do that. I am entrepreneurial within structures and within large organizations.
I really respect that.
That's where I found I'm a good number two in terms of being director of something, and that's what I'm quite comfortable doing that actually, and I quite enjoy that. So what I have to do is keep making sure. So God told me, I felt God say to me, I'm going to promote you, and at the time that looked like becoming a CEO of that charity or a different charity, because I'd kind of reached that level as a director on the ELT and the executive leadership team. And what I didn't realize was promotion, especially in the kingdom of God, can take many forms. Yeah. It may end up one day mean volunteering in the soup kitchen. Do you know what I mean? Promotion isn't always more money and a better title. Because believe me, money's nice and helpful and it pays the mortgage. Titles are great and it makes you look good on LinkedIn or wherever it is that you flaunt your title in your own culture and community. But it does not, it genuinely isn't the thing that, it's not the be all and end all. Let's put it that way. It's not the thing that you should build your life on. It's not the place. And I talk a lot in the book about identity and the fact that, yes, here's how to find a purpose. You find out what you want to do, who you want to do it with, and whose life it's going to change. Here's how you write a vision. You have a picture of the future, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Here's how you make a plan. There are those practical things about getting a project from 0 to 60 miles an hour, right?
Yeah.
But what's more important is the journey and how you develop as a person and your character and whether you keep your character and whether you take shortcuts. Reverend Celia, who's become a friend, wrote, who you are and how you lead are irrevocably entwined. And I genuinely believe that. Like, if you get to the top and you get some money in your bank account and a nice job title and you are a horrible person and you don't have any friends left and your only friends are now other people who have done the same, then something's gone very wrong. Yeah. And when you go to that funeral, or when people come to your funeral, like I did for my dad, are people going to sit there quietly under their breath going, they were right, so and so? Yeah, I'm not surprised they made their millions. Did you ever spend time with them, right? You want them sitting there going, oh my goodness, I would not be where I am today. Yeah. If it wasn't for Romanah or if it wasn't for whatever.
And that leads me on to my closing question. What legacy would you like to leave?
Oh, that's a big. Do you know what? I haven't figured that out yet. I think one of the things is I want to raise up leaders. Yeah. I'm really passionate about that. I love seeing people who don't realize that they have so much potential within them. Genuinely, I do. And they could be any age. It's not an age thing. I love seeing people who have huge capacity, huge potential, and they've got no idea, and they're just a mess. Like, their habits are all over the place and their lives, right? And you're like, do you know what? If you just knuckled down and focused and learned a few skills, you could be phenomenal, right? So I love seeing that, and I love what you do. I love Eloquent. I love projects like that take young people and take them out of what could be quite difficult, chaotic, painful situations and bring them somewhere on a regular basis where they can feel self-esteem, they can feel proud of themselves, they can feel a sense of community and camaraderie, and all that stuff is so great. And I used to be involved in projects like that were doing that in prison. So I love that. And what we need in this, AI is this big thing at the moment, right? AI is going to replace all these jobs, and it is, unfortunately. I have no idea what the workplace is going to look like when my 11-year-old boys enter the workplace. It's going to be unrecognizable. And it is a bit scary, but also you need to remember what it's not going to do. And AI is never going to be a leader. It's never going to solve the problems that we have: water scarcity, climate change, human trafficking, the big problems, the big ones, or healthcare, lack of global healthcare. those things are not going to be solved by AI. They're just not, because you need leaders with vision and grit to do that stuff. And I don't ever think you're going to put in the right kind of prompt.
Yeah.
Dear ChatGPT, please solve world hunger. You know, all ChatGPT does currently is summarize what's already on the internet. Well, we've not solved it, and there are people involved. And where there are people, there's selfishness, there's greediness, there's agendas. And so you're always going to need leaders to cut through that stuff. So yeah, I think leaders are hugely important, and are going to be increasingly important. We don't want cardboard cut out, factory produced, manufactured, employees necessarily. We need a few of those, but we need leaders. We need people who have a broad set of skills and character in order to solve the problems, whether it's a little problem in your community
or a big one
globally. Still the same principles.
Darren, thank you so much.
Thanks, man.
Thank you for teaching me how to be a better leader and continually supporting what I do and dropping wisdom into my life at different stages that I need it. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for the opportunity. It's great.